welcome to the How of High Performance. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm intrigued and excited to hear what Jackson Wray is going to share with us. Jackson is a former professional rugby player for the Saracens, and he has recently, in the last couple of years, transitioned out of professional sport into business. So, Jackson, welcome to the How of High Performance.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, I'm so intrigued. Can you just give us a short overview, Jackson, of your career to date, just so we can understand a bit of context of where your experience comes from?
Yeah, sure. So I joined Saracens in 2004, and actually 2004. Yeah, 2004. So I spent 20 years at the club until sort of retired in end of 2023 season. Um, and during that period, I graduated the junior academy, then graduated the senior academy. Made my debut in 2008. Then went on to make 309 appearances for the
Wow,
club
wow,
over over that period until 2023. And yeah, very fortunate to have been in a successful team and a great group of people, more so to share those memories with. Once I think it was 5 Premierships and 3 European Cups. Then my last game professionally was in the 2023 Premiership final, which we won. So I managed to go out on a high.
amazing.
Um, but yeah, so and then throughout that period, I spent a lot of time following my psychology degree, out in the world of business and sport, learning about high performing environments, and obviously then the people that were within them, and then sort of learnt basically off the pitch really for the time I was playing, until I then transitioned into a few roles which I'd got into whilst I was still playing, and trying to put now all of the things I learned on and off the pitch into action in a completely different setting, which has been very interesting and enjoyable so far.
Jackson, thank you. That sounds so interesting. Wow, so many games, so many tournaments, and how wonderful you went out on that high. Congratulations. Before we go into your lessons and what you've learned, can you just share with me, in a very simple human way, your definition of high stakes?
Now, I've been thinking about this obviously since the phrase kind of came to me, and I think, to be honest, high stakes for me are when there is something um, almost away from the norm. So something you aren't expecting. So we used to call it in rugby thunderbolts. So you think you're on the right track, and all of a sudden you get struck by one
Wow.
very quickly. Now that can be in the form of injury. It can be in the form of losing games heavily. It can be in losing finals. One of the ones that I might touch on now and elaborate on was the salary cap scandal, which I was at Saracens for in 2019, where the result was we got the biggest fine in sporting history and relegated to the championship. Now that was, not foreseen by any of us, and was a moment where you had two choices to make. The one was to leave the club, and that was that, or you put your head up and you, as a group of you, individually and as a group, you put your head down and say we're going to make this right. So for me, it's around the lack of preparation for something, and actually the high stakes of having decisions to make that are, self-defining, business defining, team defining, and the outcome is incredibly important.
Mm,
And you don't always get a long time to think about it. Um, so that for me is then it's almost that decision. So high stakes is about that decision. When you prepare for a decision over a long period, you can, mitigate and try and build a plan. But when one hits you from the side, you have no choice but to react and do things which, in a quick manner. So I'd say that's probably that time element and the lack of awareness is for me what high stakes means, because then you've got to really weigh it up really really quickly and then
mm.
make a call.
I love that. That's that thunderbolt really brings it to life, doesn't it? Kind of,
Mm,
it's just
yeah.
coming and happening. So, what has been a key high stakes moment for you in your leadership as a professional sportsman? Obviously, you've got incredible history there, incredible whole raft of achievements that you've managed to deliver. But does one particularly stand out for you, please? And can you tell us how you navigated that high stakes situation?
I think the one that springs to mind is related to that
Mm,
other example, probably obviously. Um, I remember we were sat down in the meeting room. It was in March, I believe. Memories are not the best, but yeah, March, and the CEO at the time said we had already had a points deduction back in November, but it wasn't enough to mean that we went down. So on that morning in March, we were told that we were having another 70 points put on, which is basically relegating us to the Championship. And it was out in the press and it was everywhere. That weekend, following that meeting, we played Gloucester away. Now you won't know much about Gloucester, but as away games go, on a Friday night down in Gloucester, it's probably one of the most unforgiving places you can go. And I was captain on that weekend.
Wow.
So we went from the Tuesday, Wednesday, where we were told that we're getting relegated, the press are going to have it very soon. And we had to go down to Gloucester on Friday night without any of our international players and go out there and play. Bearing in mind that we're already relegated, so the points don't matter. Winning doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter if we win by 150 points, we're still going down. So that was an example, and actually, I don't know. That's probably my example of it in terms of how I approached it. I suppose it was well. Bear in mind, I'd probably been in the club playing for a long time
Hmm.
at that point. I've been in the first team for about 9, 10 years, and we had a few people around me that were senior players at that time. But it was a young group, and to be honest, what really mattered was the trust and the connection to the people. So I knew that behind me there were people that were incredibly connected to the group and to the club, and it was, again, because of that, it meant that I was able to go, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be unflappable the whole day. We're going to be, from the minute we get on the bus to the minute we get back on the bus after the game, we're literally going to be so caring about ourselves. So all I really did was say, we care about each other in this group. And what we do now on this night is not about points. It's not about anything else other than each other in the group. So really just try to navigate all the attention internally, because I knew what they were thinking, because I was kind of thinking it myself, was that we're going to go down there, we're going to get abused, which we were. We're going to get called everything under the sun. It's going to be pretty horrible. And it all was that. So
Gosh.
the media weren't helping either. So they were hammering us from all over the place. And I just decided that we're going to make it all about the group and all about the team. So trying to bring everyone together, and we ended up winning the game, which is quite hard to do now. We won the game, which no one believed we could. And from the minute we got on the bus to the minute we left, we were literally, all energy was internal. So we focused all our energy inside. And I just drove people to try and think about actions based on what it might help your teammate. We did this anyway, but it was like heightened for those games after that. So everything you do is helping someone next to you, and that's all that mattered in the day. Not points, not trophies, nothing, because there was nothing to play for. So yeah, I don't know whether that talks about how I approached it, but
Yeah.
for me, it was directing people to what I knew was what mattered, which I think that it worked, obviously, because we
Yeah, you won.
played really well and we won the game. But I just remember quite vividly having that weird conversation where you say, well, it doesn't matter if we win or lose here. It really doesn't.
But that was a flirt. Hey?
But it's not high stakes. The high stakes nature of it was what people are expecting to see of us, and what they end up seeing. That's what's important to us. So we need to show that we are what we say we are. And it's our chance to do it. We're the next team to play, our group of players. So we decided we chose a fight, and we went down and we won, and it stays with me to this day. So I remember it very clearly.
Is there anything you remember that you did in your own head? Because obviously you're captain, so you've got to be leading the whole team through very difficult, high stakes situations. Is there anything you remember about your own mindset, or where you went to give yourself that confidence, that conviction, so you could give it to others?
I think it comes down to preparation. I mean, for the years preceding that, it hadn't always been straightforward. They'd learned so much about process, and knowing that keeping everyone emotionally in the right place is massive in sport, because you have the highs and lows emotionally. So how do I keep that? That was something that was really important to me, and that's why I used the drive energy towards each other. So I focused on that, and then it was about the process in which we know works, and trying to keep everyone on track with the process, and just reaffirming that. So I suppose in my mind, it was trying to cover off those two things, and yeah, I think it was just from learning, from being in and around it, from learning off of leaders in the past, and again, whatever the players see when we get something wrong, or when we're getting stuff thrown at us when we get off the bus, what do they see of me? They see this unflappable nature of no problem, next one, no problem, next thing, and approaching it in that step by step. Um,
Mm,
there's a long time before the game when you get off the bus. Probably about an hour and a half or so. So it's about not looking too far ahead and going, right, the first problem is going to be getting off the bus. Okay, done. Next one. And then just being pretty consistent with what people around you are seeing. And I think that's some of the best leaders I've ever had that, this unflappable nature to them in good times and bad. They were incredibly emotionally stable.
mm,
Um, and I think that because the minute you are too much the other way, one way or the other, then they're looking at, okay, well, maybe we aren't so good here. And maybe they are going to get into our heads and this kind of thing. So just trying to be incredibly consistent and unflappable when things go wrong, but in control when things go right.
nice. Thank you.
Um, mm,
Okay, so if we take that and now we look at your private life, because I say that leaders aren't just job titles, or you're not just someone on
mm.
the pitch doing your professional rugby, you're Jackson outside of work as well. Is there a moment from your life, Jackson, that you're happy to share with us now where that was high stakes and what it was and how you successfully navigated through personally?
Well, again, I've just defined my example of high stakes, and this probably doesn't exactly fit in the mold. Although, yeah, because one of them doesn't, I didn't have a choice, so I couldn't make one or the other. And the other one, I did give myself a bit more time than the high stakes I've just described. But it was still high stakes in terms of the rippling effect of how long it would have carried on. So
Oh,
I suppose the main one would have been when I decided to retire from rugby. Now, I had another year or two on my contract that I could have carried on playing, but I had to make the decision whether that was the right thing for me and my family and everything. But it was all I'd ever known, So all I'd ever known is playing rugby. It was my job since I was 14,
wow.
and now I'm at 33, and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to now step off this train. Whereas it's all I've ever known in terms of because you could work and do hobbies and things, but actually what pays the bills and what is going to be there for mortgages and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now I'm going to step off it now into somewhere I have no idea what it is, if it's going to go well. But basically, that was probably the moment. That was a really high stakes moment because I could have played for 2 more years, and in hindsight, it hasn't been a massive successful couple of years. But I would still have been very comfortable with people that I enjoyed, friends of mine I've known for over a decade. So I decided to move off that track and go on to a new one. And how did I do that? I suppose everything I did over the last 10 years. I mean, that one track I told you about, the Saracens one, I trained and prepped for that for my whole life. Then I moved on to another track, which I had already been prepping for. And you don't realize that until you start looking at what you might do.
Mm,
And now I'm obviously doing a few different roles, which basically was a byproduct of meeting and learning and being involved in so many different things that I'd prepped already. I didn't really think about it, but until I turned around in the rear mirror and looked about the things I've done, the people I've met, what I enjoy doing, it sort of found its way. So that high stakes moment was probably dealt with and I mitigated it to a degree with the work I'd done previously. And that moment of turning around and collating it all and actually writing my CV, funnily enough,
mm,
I was writing my CV because I was like, right, well, I might need a CV now. I had one from a long time ago,
yeah.
and then I updated it and all the dates in, all the qualifications and all this stuff. I was thinking, crikey, like, there's quite a bit there. It's longer than my rugby one, which is actually quite funny. So no, that gave me incredible confidence. We're always looking for affirmation that we're doing the right thing. But I turned around and said, no, I'm incredibly confident. What I've learned on the pitch in terms of the high performance arena and how I pair that with what I've done off the pitch in terms of learning the theory and applying it in different places. But that decision was a life defining one. Not just me involved as well, because I had a wife and kids as well. So that had to be part of it. So yeah, and I decided to do it. It wasn't 100% clear as well, I must say. It wasn't.
Mm.
It was probably 65% probably, which isn't a massive number when you think you're going to go on a different journey. But
What,
that was probably the main one. So
what,
go on.
what was the trigger point that made you realise, because you said you could have stayed another couple of years, kept safe. What was the trigger point that you thought, no, I'm going to do it now?
I think when I started to scope out what it might look like outside of sport, again, you think about it, but until you actually that comes down to it, you don't look back and think, well, what might it look like? It was the reception I got from people that I was going to start going into. So could I give myself a career or a start of a career in somewhere that I liked, people that I liked, an environment that was growing and entrepreneurial, and would engage me, give me
Mm,
purpose. So the minute I had all of those things, again, I'd learned that from the work I'd done before. I had more conviction that it was the right thing to do. Um, and the companies that I was going into were growth mindset companies. So I was joining a train early. And when I weighed up the decision on the left side, which is to carry on playing or leave to go over here, you want to make that jump not as early as you can, but within reason, because I'm now 2 years further ahead
yeah.
in what I'm doing now than I would have been if I jumped. Because it would have been about now actually that I'd have
Uh-huh.
started probably.
Okay.
So as we speak, I'd be 1st of July. Yeah,
Oh,
literally almost
wow.
1st of July. That would have been
Wow.
2 years today. 2 years today of my last day of employment with Saracens. So yeah. So I think I just when I weighed it all up and I decided, I think everything became clearer. Um, and no, then as soon as I made the call, that was it. It was done. So
Yeah.
I called it in February 23. So then I played 4 more months, um, and then accelerated the rest. So
And,
yeah.
uh, and you,
And then the other one,
yes,
which is
Mister,
quite
you
cool.
mentioned one that you
The other
didn't
one,
have a choice about.
well,
I'm intrigued.
well, yeah. So it was probably I think it was, when would it have been? Like February 2019, probably. Um, it was before I think all the salary cap stuff actually happened. So it was before all of this. Um, my wife, well, we've got two kids already, 10 and 9 now. So they were probably 3 and 4. And yeah, my wife, I had an email. My wife went to scan and things and expecting a third. I thought, yeah, great. And it turns out we were having twins. So
Wow.
so we went from two kids to four. So
All under five.
yeah,
No,
four
no.
under five.
Yeah. Okay. Just
Yeah,
but young.
very young. So obviously, I mean, at the time I was sort of 28, 20, yeah, 28, turning 29. Um, so yeah, not. I mean, we had two already, and we obviously, the first one's always a shock. Second one's even more of a shock, and then that was a bit of a moment, and not quite high stakes. Again, I couldn't, didn't really have anything other than to get my head around it. But yeah, that was quite a funny one actually, and definitely felt high stakes at that point.
I bet. But what? That's quite an interesting one because it's such a significant life change. You're not in
Mm,
control of it, you or your wife.
mm.
It's quite fascinating. How did you manage to navigate through that, both for you and for your partnership with your wife, and then your family
Um,
dynamic?
yeah, no, I think obviously when I got through the immediate shock of doubling the children. Now then it just came down to, I'm a bit of a what do you call it? Like I like to look things quite black and white. So what's all of the considerations? I won't call them negative, but all the considerations you need to have, and what are all the massive benefits. So you put all that down, and the considerations were just things like bigger car, need another bedroom, all of which were, you know, not that big a deal in the end. Um, but actually, then just the logistics of things, and um, yeah, so it was just all those kind of weighing it all up and going, right, well, what can I sort which will make it easier? So just knock off all the easy ones, and then just work on the other ones, and then really, like anything when you have kids, it's just you find a way,
Yeah.
and um, adds a new dynamic, and now they're 5, turning 6 this year, the twins, and my older two are turning 11 and 10. So
Oh,
it's so yeah, I mean, and now it's just loud and it's busy, and but I just remember at the time that it definitely felt like that high pressure moment.
I
But
can only
um,
imagine. Yeah,
then
yeah.
I had to go out and train straight away as well. I found out and had to go and train straight away, so that was quite a funny session.
God, at least you were distracted, I guess, for a little
Yeah, oh yeah,
while.
absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. So, looking at your sports career, looking at the challenges both chosen and received privately,
Mm.
are there some key lessons, Jackson, you can share with us for other people who are listening or reading that can equally help them navigate their high stakes moments coming from a place of seniority?
I think, I mean, is it linked to high stakes? I think it helps in these moments. I think it's not one thing which you go, right, you've got that, you've cracked it, you've sorted high stakes. Not really that, what I'm probably about to say, but it is almost a, I said about consistency before in terms of what people are seeing in these moments. But actually, what's even more important is your consistency in the build up to anything. So we don't know when things are coming. So
Mm.
again, the high stakes, whether it's my definition or someone else's, it's you can know they're coming sometimes, but actually a lot of the time you don't. For me, when I think about how I classify them, and I think the one thing that I try and be is be incredibly consistent in the way that I challenge people, in the way that I take on feedback, the way that I turn up in the morning, um, how organized I am, how disciplined I am with my time, all the things which should be easy but aren't. Be incredibly consistent with those. Keep
Mm.
your level high, because ultimately, when it comes down to it, in high stakes, it's never just you. In a moment that's a high stakes environment, you are going to need people around you. Most often than not. And I think the work that you do in a build up to something pays dividends massively. So I think that's the first thing. I think when you have these moments or high stakes events or thunderbolts or whatever they are, then it's about your aura that you give off. It's about how you regain control if you lost it for a moment, and then be incredibly clear. So don't. One thing I said, I'll never not say something if I feel that it needs to be said.
Hmm.
So, and that sets people up again for when something happens. You can be incredibly direct. When time is not your friend or it's not on your side, you have to get things done quickly. And if you can't get your message across, or they aren't receiving it because you've changed your tone, then you're wasting time, and likely the outcome isn't going to be as good as it could have been. So I think just be incredibly consistent both before and after a high stakes environment, or during and after.
Hmm.
Um, and that then comes into the genuine part. You have to genuinely care and about the people and the where you are, whichever that business is, or if it's your own or you work in a bigger business. um you can't pretend. You have to be genuine about it, because people are cotton on, and they'll understand, and then it won't be they won't be there when that you need them, and you won't get through these moments. So I suppose that for me, and again, just lead with that emotional um sort of level all the time.
Mm.
When someone's really pissed you off and you want to go and then you have to also then, and when someone's achieved massively, you can't I mean, after this emotional sort of level, when things are good, you end up here, and when things are terrible, you end up down here depressed. You've got to retain in the sort of, I call the performance zone of stay tight to this line, and the best is, I think, stay tight to this middle line.
Mm.
um and when things are going great, they don't get too overconfident, and when things are terrible, then they fall through the floor. Easier than done, again, but how you regulate your emotion throughout these ups and downs. And that's in rugby, we would have a chart which was far more up and down than aggressive, because in a game you could be on top for a minute, you could be down for 2 minutes. Like, it's really quite quick.
Yes.
And then week to week, you're getting immediate feedback, whether it be videos or media or coaches. So personally, when you're not in that heightened environment, you have to be a lot more sort of self-regulating, and make sure that you are reflecting and going, right, well, how did I do in that moment? Because it was high pressure, and did I get it right? So you've got to constantly be assessing. Maybe personally, when things are really tough, how did I go? Did I hit my standards, or was it a bit off? So having that self-regulation is really important, I think.
And was there anything particular? I'm sure there's lots and lots, but if anything you can just put out for us around that high performance for the team? Because obviously, as you said, high stakes is not a solo task, and none more so than in professional sport, and unless you're a
Mm,
solo athlete. But even then, you're not solo. You've got teammates, and you've got others to
mm.
think about. Any key lessons from achieving that really great high performance in high stakes as a team when you were leading it?
Yeah, again, it's not too dissimilar to what I said before. I mean, it's every interaction that you have as a team, whether it's when you turn up in the morning at the training ground, you say hello, or you sit down for a coffee with people around you. It's the biggest thing you can do is give people time, and get to know them, and spend time, understand them more so. I've done obviously a fair bit of reading and a bit of work on this around, what is the the leading indicator of a high performing team. Most people think, talent, money, being able to buy those players, um, best coaches, but actually it's not. It's sort of the what was it? Put it. We'll come back to it in a minute. Oh, shared understanding. That's it. Shared understanding between people. Okay, so that's what the leading indicator is. Whether that's in banking, whether it's in sport, wherever it is. If you've spent time together for a long period of time, then you are going to perform at a higher level than those that haven't. And you see it in football all the time. Why did Saudi Arabia beat Argentina in the World Cup? And Argentina went on to win the World Cup. These things, you see it in loads of different settings. And I think, but to get that shared understanding, yes, one thing is time, because if it's season after season after season, and again, that was a lot of our success was down to is we had an incredibly settled squad for 10 years, with a young group of players that I came through with, and we all stayed together. But there are ways in which you can try and fast track that, which is, spend time getting to know people. What are people motivated by? What are they, what are their fears? All these different things which you just don't know, and spend time together and trying to fast track that. And it's one thing that my old place Saracens used to do incredibly well. Because then again, back to my other example, it's when the pressure comes on, you know how people are going to react. I know how, if I'm not captain, if Owen's a captain, I know how he's going to react. So it's almost, well, and also what people are good at, what people aren't good at. And you just build more understanding, which means you spend less time trying to regulate your reaction. If I'm trying to regulate my reaction to something, if I've never seen it before, or I'm not used to seeing it as much, that's going to take me more time to deal with it. So then I can't move on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're not using as much bandwidth to sort of interpret something, because it's just like a reaction. We called it like tacit understanding. So it's things that you know, but you don't know why you know.
Okay.
So it's like, I don't know, it's probably like when you wake up and you're like cruising. It's probably like driving to work sometimes.
Okay.
You've driven to work thousands of times. Now, sometimes you're in your own world, listen to radio or whatever, and you actually don't know how you got there.
Yes.
But you just know how to get there.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. And it does apply to some of the stuff I'm doing now. It's make what seems new normal, and then people don't use any resources to do it, because it's pressure environment. There's a lot of work to do. There's stuff every day. So don't use it up with something so small that means that you've thrown you out for the day. And has a knock-on impact, compounding nature of day-to-day work and life, I suppose.
100%. Yeah.
But no, so that's
okay. No, fascinating.
I don't know.
And if we were to boil it down, Jackson, if we said, right, you've got all this experience, all this wisdom, quite unique and specialist from the world of sport and also now business. If you could boil it down into just one killer piece of advice, very practical in how to navigate high stakes as a senior leader successfully, what would that one piece of advice be?
I did have one before this, but I think it's changed.
That's okay.
I just think consistency and being genuine with your actions, pays dividends when difficulty or a high stakes event comes around. And don't wait for the event to arrive and then try and become that, I'd say. And that, I think I don't know if that's been putting the phrase in the right manner, but hopefully you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I like
based on what I said before.
I think it's nice to keep things really simple, because I think often in the world of business, leadership, high stakes, people try to compensate by overcomplicating, and that just makes everything harder. But so I think the more simple, smart is my saying. The more simple, smart we can have understanding around what matters and what's valuable, then just the better everything can work. Like talking about your point about not wasting that energy in terms of what does that even mean? The more direct I think we can just communicate and make it meaningful and make our language really resonate, then I think we can move mountains, can't we?
Yeah, exactly. I think that the proactive nature of it and not being reactive to an event, I think that's for me is, you have to practice being the way you want to be in these moments. So you can't it's not just the tap. You can't just turn it on and off. Find the way you want to be and what you're going to be like, and then just be that every day.
I love that. Jackson, so much wisdom, so much insight. literally from out there on the field. I don't want to imagine how many bruises and injuries you've had gaining all this wisdom as well, literally and
Fortunately,
physically.
too many to count, but
Yeah.
fortunately, I'm a bit safer now.
But just thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. I'm just distilling what you've shared, and I'm excited to get it out there in the world. So thank you so much.
No problem at all.